Elisabeth Tengbergen, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to talk to you. You are a partner at Kienbaum, heading up the sustainability practice. And as far as I know, you work on leadership under polycrisis, focusing on how people and institutions adapt when uncertainty is structural and control is limited. What do you think? What is the most important attribute which a leader has to get rid of in times of real chaos in very, very bad times?
It is a sense of control, because most people in business reach a level of seniority because they project or actually have a specific sense of control over a part or over a whole business. And that is one of the most fundamental things that disappears in situations of polycrisis. So that goes completely against what they're trained to do and what they intend to do.
So what does a good leader do in this situation?
I think that will go more into theory more than practice, even though there are situations in practice where, of course, crises have happened at a company level. So I even think that large corporations treat crises very regularly. But a crisis is something that has a head and a tail, and that has a scope, and often where you have people that are trained to address it or have experience to address it. I think what is the difficulty in situations of polycrisis and of any type of systemic crisis that goes way beyond the business. So I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe we can direct it back to your question.
Well, I think partly, for sure, it answers it, but let's reflect it from another angle. How do you, as a leader, what can you give to your people when you can't give certainty anymore because of polycrisis? What would be a good strategy to survive in such a circumstance?
I think that even the ability to be able to act without panic is already a pretty good way to start, which is very demanding in situations that are chaotic and that are difficult. But it would be one of the most basic attributes needed to not create directionless chaos. And I think that people will automatically look at their leaders to find some direction. Just like children will look at their parents for some direction in uncertain times. So I think the same goes for leaders. And then how to go about that will depend on many different things. It will depend on how many people you lead, on how bad the actual situation is for the people involved in that situation, also in how much agency you feel yourself. So the fact that you are able to keep the calm, and which you can do in different ways, but at the very least is not showing panic would be a good start. But also in situations where everything is unforeseen, there is no precedent for it, there is no training for it, in still being able to think clearly, and also not have the illusion that you can do everything yourself, but to actually give people direct involvement in participating in whatever is happening, which, depending on a specific company culture, may be more or less difficult.
Yeah. So. Okay, I wanted to ask, is it possible to train for such a scenario, which is probably not possible, like exactly, but is it possible for a leader to train their stress capability somehow? Or I can't imagine how you train for a certain scenario which you really don't know what it delivers. The only thing you know that it's going to be really hard, is going to be not certain. So yeah, how do you train for this?
I think that from a business perspective, there is no such training. What I do think there is a lot of training on is, because of course there is executive training under crises, et cetera. So there's, but it is defined very much as confined to a specific business question, a specific business situation. What at least I believe is much less common is to have a training or any type of, I don't even think you could find that in education, but maybe even just in practical training or in something that's done in business, where it not just affects the business, but you personally, but also everything around you. So as far as I know, so unless anybody knows that, I would love to hear, but as far as I know, that doesn't exist. So I think that to answer that question, we need to look into other areas of expertise where that does happen. So for example, I think that military training could be one example, and I'm sure that there are many others. But to look at what happens when you are in situations you can't predict, also situations you can't control, but that you live through and need to get through. How do you do that? And also where senior officers not just have to think of themselves, but also a whole platoon or a whole team of people, a whole group of people. And I think that probably not just those trained in battlefield experiences, but also, for example, in situations where you're also with a lot of civilians within cities, within that could be training that is scenario-based, not outcome-based or so not linear, where that could feed into some form of training that you can learn from. So I have come to understand that there are organizations, and for example, I think insurance companies are very good examples of that, where scenario planning and risk assessment is natural. It's part of the business. Also fields such as health and safety also have specific training and have specific outlooks depending on scenarios. What do you do? So most of these things already exist somewhere. I just don't think that on a large scale, they're yet geared towards what we will be facing, where nobody knows whether that will happen soon or a little bit later, and nobody knows how bad it'll be and how fast it'll go in any place. But I think that we can be certain that some form of crisis, which won't be an easily passing crisis, we will face at some point, all of us. So, you know.
It's interesting what you're saying, because I think, people who are responsible, they kind of know by now that there is something looming in the darkness and it's coming, and it seems to be something against which we cannot we cannot avoid it. It doesn't seem like something that can be somehow defeated in a way. So it seems to leave us but one chance, which is trying to prepare or rather adapt. And for me, it's really weird that, I've been talking to scientists and speakers the whole day, and they all pointed out that neither in food, neither really in energy, neither in company culture, is not really a really targeted preparation for adaptation, actually. And for me, it's really weird. Isn't this striking for you?
It is, and it is something that I have also seen within my context over the more than 25 years that I've been working, where at first I was part of that same group that had no prior knowledge or education or anything else. It's very easy to avoid these issues. Yeah, you really have to look for them.
Yeah.
And I coincidentally bumped into it years ago, and I chose to go down many rabbit holes because I was faced with that same information at the same time as all of my direct colleagues. And I was even more surprised to even see that there was no curiosity. I could not help but go into those rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And as the years passed by, I could not help but be convinced that there is nothing more important than understanding what we're all going to face. But I still, to this day, where we can actually objectively say that there is more obviously out there than we could ignore years ago, not only am I not seeing more curiosity and more general knowledge and response to this, but less. And I have no empirical evidence to support that, but I hear other people say, so I can only base on observation, and it could be anecdotal because it's not general, but it seems like more people are even turning away from the fact that it is now issues, let's just call them let's even basically just face the fact that at the very best we're facing a recession. Even that seems very difficult to absorb for many people in business, and they seem to be actively counteracting that by saying no, or any version of that. So even in times where you would say, well, maybe finally now we could have an adult conversation about this, it's not happening. What I am seeing is groups of people that are open to this. So it seems that we're now running many different parallel worlds at the same time, where I still do think that the group of, let's call them polycrisis aware, of collapse aware, or whatever name we want to give it, that group is growing and is more vocal and is actively looking for one another. Certainly now that times are obviously going to get more difficult, there is even more need for connection. And this is what drew me to the World Adaptation Forum. Once I had heard about it, I thought, well, this is finally a space where we can start the discussion at another level of first trying to test out what do you know, we don't need to look for any specific signals of are you open to this conversation, because that's a given here.
Yes.
And it's a relief because that is very much what I'm missing anywhere else. So the great part is it is actually giving us a platform to find each other and to lift people up to even further levels of understanding of where we all have gaps in understanding. But I think it is therefore, again, creating even more polarization than already exists, is the differences grow even bigger, the gap grows bigger between those that don't want to know it, that don't know it, and those that are starting to understand or have already understood it for a long time.
Yeah. Well, Elisabeth, I'm really happy that you're here, because out of this short conversation, what I feel is that you've been through the process, so your direction is genuine, and I think you're doing the right thing. And actually, I think it's a good business opportunity to think about a training, for business people, which is exactly for this.
Yeah.
I might do it.
Yeah. Well, then let's connect, because this is what I've been working on for the past years as well in parallel.
Yeah.
Because at some point people will be asking more questions regardless of what they've come to understand now, but people will be asking more questions around, I don't know what's happening, I'm not interested in how, but what do we do? Because they will be facing some type of issue, so maybe not wanting to look back or wanting to broaden their understanding, but wanting to have very tangible things to do. Yeah. So I think it's inevitable that people will come to that point. And then I hope that everything that I have come to understand and have come to think about being in such a similar situation of just having a job and having a family and living in business as usual, how you can still get through that. Because I heard different people also say today, it's often doomers, or as Jim Bendel calls it, doomsters, are often confused for being very depressed.
Yeah.
But no, it's the contrary. Yeah. As Pablo Servin said, we're actually, and George Sacrifice we're actually happy people.
Yes.
Happy that we're living and being grateful for everything that we're still given to this day.
Mm-hmm. I think it really makes your life happier if you know about polycrisis, because it brings you to realize how good you have it.
Yes.
So you will be happy.
I'm far more grateful.
Thanks for this wonderful talk, Elisabeth. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.